long-term training experience with PMP, Agile courses, including ACP and the Disciplined Agile courses. I myself am a Disciplined Agile coach. I have trained quite a few people over the years in PMP, and I'm incredibly interested in some of the changes that are going on in PMI, and really thrilled with the current curriculum. So I think this should be interesting on that front, just to go through and talk about that. So without too much more preamble, I will go ahead and begin here. So once again, we are Project Management Gorillas. We are offering PMP Bootcamp, Disciplined Agile training, lots of day training, and lots of webinars and stuff like that, typical ATP activities. In the chat, you will find that tonight's presentation is worth a PDU. And if you take our little survey, which is very brief and not collecting any personal information really, we'll go ahead and submit your PDUs for you if you hold a certificate with PMI. So here is that information, and tonight's course covers PMP, PGMP, portfolio, and Kaplan. So if you need those, we have PDUs for you tonight. So I would go back one slide and just say that I'm here to represent our little ATP, Project Management Gorillas. We're authorized to teach PMP and Disciplined Agile, the curated new curriculums, which we love. But one thing I would say is I am not necessarily here to represent PMI. If you like the points of view expressed, maybe PMI agrees. If you don't like them, don't blame PMI, blame me. I'm going to express very candidly some of my own opinions, and I think that it should be interesting just to see the alignment. And we will do a Q&A at the end, so feel free to put questions in chat as we go along, and we'll unmute everybody at the end and we'll have our Q&A. So we're scheduled to run for an hour, so I will drop into Q&A mode at about 6:45. So one thing I would point out, there is a tremendous proliferation of snake oil salespeople out there in the world. I used to be very proudly what we called in the olden days a LinkedIn open networker. And now I'm being attacked by bot swarms. And maybe they're people, I don't know, but this is kind of typical of what happens if you accept an invitation from anybody. You get unsolicited invitations to take several different types of training at an enormously impractical, impossible discount. And so I've taken to blocking these bots, and if I spot one that looks like a bot, I won't take them in anymore. So I guess I'm not a lion anymore. I'm not a LinkedIn open networker. But I would say that I firmly have the opinion that there are a lot of snake oil salesmen out there who have diminished the value of the PMP immensely by trying to commoditize the training and to take away the skills that a really good trainer brings to the game. So I caution everybody, there's a lot of snake oil out there, and I would advise you, be wary of that. And it's not just the PMP, it's all kinds of certifications, and everything now is turned into a certificate of certification. So I have a very strong emotional response to this, as you can tell. So just a heads up, there's lots of this out there, and you're not going to find a good deal out there. So this is my opinion about what's going on with the new PMP. They've made massive improvements to the curriculum, massive improvements to what you can do with the PMP. They're leapfrogging the tired old Agile versus, the tired old Agile versus Waterfall conversation, and they're moving forward. They're going on to a new plateau. And I have to say, I've been hearing this traditional project manager anti-sales pitch now for a better part of 2 decades. And I have to say, I've been a chief scrum master of 130 scrum teams for, let's put it this way, I have my 10,000 hours now. So I have to say, if there's anything traditional, it's Agile. And so it's time to move on from that tired old conversation, and I'll talk more about that. But one thing I would say is with the new PMP, the pre-2021 test prep will not work. I also don't believe that self-study will get you there. And certainly I'm against the online snake oil that's out there. I don't believe those sources are credible, and I wish LinkedIn would kick them off, to be perfectly honest. If you do want to pass the PMP exam, this is, again, my representation to you. Nothing's going to replace the PMI curated curriculum. So get that from an ATP or get it from an online curriculum provider, like you could get PMI's online curriculum rather. And here's something. No one is allowed to offer the online curriculum, the curated curriculum, except PMI. So it's either an ATP doing live stream or it's PMI doing the online on demand. But there is no one else doing the curated curriculum. So, better still do both, depending on your own abilities to get in. But I think that, both are great material, and I extremely, extremely value the practitioner instructor, the person that's actually done the project management, understands how to use the material, and really can make it sing for you. So one of the big changes with the PMP, I think we can represent with a little Google game. So I'm just going to try to bring up my Google here for a minute and share it. And there's lots of key PMI catchphrases. A RAM, PMI, responsibility and assignment matrix. What is a RAM in project management? So here's the description of it. How about the ever-beloved RACI? Very easy to find this as well. How about something a little more eclectic and weird? PMI management reserve. So here's a contingency reserve and management reserve article about the difference between these two. And my point in this little Google game is to say that a lot of the information that was prior in the PMP training curriculum and test has been commoditized, and no one really is interested these days from a hiring point of view or from a practical point of view of being able to rattle off all these artifacts and processes and tasks. What they're interested in is when would you use them? And I'm sure a lot of people are listening to this and they might have their hackles up and say, well, the PMP's always been about that. It has, but now even more so. And when you hire a PMP, you expect somebody who can tell you the circumstances where a RAM makes sense, or the circumstances where a RACI makes sense, or the circumstances where earned value is the way to go. All of these things apply in this post-predictive versus Agile world. And it's going to be the experienced PMP that will get us there. And I think, the Google game is pretty easy to play because every single one of us, I imagine, is carrying around a computer in our pocket that not only takes phone calls, but has more CPU in it than they used to land the Apollo missions on the moon. So if you think about that, anybody can Google these things anytime, anywhere. It's the difference in having the experience. So let me get on, enough of my soapbox and, my rant against snake oil salesmen and bots on LinkedIn, and just say, here's the content for tonight. It's a one hour session, 50 minutes, really 45 to understand the new PMP, and we'll do some Q&A. We'll go into the domains of expertise. So this is the first big change that PMI has made. We'll talk about the tasks and enablers on the test. So you're hearing some new terminology, a new taxonomy is coming forth here. So those of us who have been involved with the ACP for a while or Disciplined Agile are starting to say, hey, this looks familiar. And then the tools and deliverables, hey, this is really starting to look familiar. It's very interesting to see this new method bubbling up. And frankly, it looks to be extraordinarily powerful. And I could not be more excited about the PMP than I am right now. In fact, probably since '96 when I got it, I'm looking at this saying, yeah, PMI has done something great for the world. So let's take a look. Now we're going to talk about the new and venerable sources of information for PMP. So by venerable, I mean the PMBOK. And the PMBOK is worthy of some veneration. It is, such a great manual full of such wonderful information. But Dave Davies from Guerrilla Project Management did a webinar on changes coming up in the PMBOK 7, which are quite controversial. And that's available on our website. It's a free on-demand webinar if you care to watch it. Also, PDU available for that. And years ago, I was a chapter president for PMI Cincinnati, and we did a CSM course. And in our CSM course, we brought Ron Jeffries in, one of the manifesto signatories, who's kind of local to our region. And talking to Ron about PMI and Agile and what was going on, he said, I keep urging them to come up with a method. And I think when we go through this presentation, you'll start to say, hey, I'm getting a whiff of a framework and a method here. This looks a little bit different than knowledge areas. Something's going on, and in fact, something is. So the new PMP, designed for the modern learner. I'll talk about what a modern learner is in a moment. Literally 10 times the reference material. So no longer just the PMBOK, but really quite a bit more material. And I think a lot of people on this call will be very familiar with this other material because they've probably read it. The rumor is that the 36 months leading projects is now a more flexible term. It doesn't have to necessarily be a project manager. It might be other roles, close to that. And, the other requirements here are pretty much the same. But the PMP has definitely turned a corner in terms of not just knowing the reference material, but being able to parse which situation it makes sense in. Agile, hybrid, predictive, when do you want to deploy it? And I think that it will continue to be the gold standard for project managers. And I've always looked at this and said, the PMP, when we taught the PMP course with the knowledge areas and all that in the old format, we always looked at it and said, what is a PMP? A PMP is a person running a project with, 100, 150 people. They've got all these areas of knowledge to take care of the project plan. It's got HR scope, all the areas of the project plan are completely filled out. This is a big project. If you look at Agile, the Scrum Master itself is 3 to 9 people or 5 to 10, it depends on whose Scrum you're talking about. It's kind of a junior role, a Scrum Master. When you scale Agile, you're going way past that junior role, and there are a lot of Scrum Masters out there who kind of slipped in with their CSM. And you might be on this call saying, yeah, I'm kind of seeing there's an Agile ceiling I'm bumping up against. And I want to expand, and I want to scale, and I want to become that release train engineer. The PMP is one of the tools that could help you get there. So let me talk about this modern learner concept. So PMI brings this up, and they talk about, what it is in the world today. And I have to say, first off, I'm not necessarily talking about younger. You can probably tell I am not younger. But what we're talking about is people that are in the workplace dealing with modern problems. And number one, they want to be pragmatic. They don't really care anymore about the yik-yak between Agile and Waterfall and traditional project manager and blah, blah, blah. They want to do something that works. They want to collaborate with their team and bring value to the company. The modern learner is tech savvy. They're always on. They're carrying around this moon landing telephone in their pocket. And they have a short attention span. And that's because so many things are coming at people from different directions. They're eager, they're information hungry, they're connected, and they're impatient, and frankly, they're overwhelmed. There is so much going on, and we need not go into why we're all overwhelmed at the moment, but I'm getting my second shot next week. And they expect accessibility, they expect things to be interactive, and they want a multi-learning platform. And so PMI has looked at this and said, we need our training content to be curated and to deliver for these people, for these modern learners, for people that are in the real world trying to be pragmatic. And so, as we look at this, PMI has done a really good job of cooking this into the PMP trainer badges and other badges. But we look at VSR, we look at value from the learner's perspective. So it has to be valuable to people. And I'm talking, I actually taught a Disciplined Agile Scrum Master course today. And the first thing that I said to everybody is, this is extraordinarily valuable to you. This is going to help you move well past managing your team of 3 to 9 people. It's going to lift you up. Support is when you're in this training, you need multimodal repetitions to get yourself exposed to the facts many times. And what are we talking about here? So project management gorillas, we deliver adaptive flashcards that help people learn. We deliver online tests. We deliver in-class exercises with Miro boards. And the way that the curriculum is designed for the PMP, it's basically 35-ish sections, and each section ends with some hands-on training that can go into a virtual or a physical environment. PMI has really looked at this and said, we will hit this multimodal checkbox hard. And then retrieval. So, at the end of the day, I showed one retrieval method, right? Just go out there and Google whatever this artifact is and get on board with it. But there's a ton of information, a ton of information. We have to make this available to students on an ongoing basis so they understand how to get to it, how to grow with it. And when the PMBOK turns over every 4 years, they should be able to find it. So one of the gentlemen at Project Management Gorillas is been working on the Standards Plus Committee. And this is the online repository of all great things project management. It is starting out, and it is, yet another way to continuously retrieve. We've got projectmanagement.com, just general Google stuff, and all the collateral that you get with these tests. So the next piece to talk about with the PMP is it can no longer be the sage on the stage where everybody comes to the classroom and sits down and gets the big paper books, and after a couple hours they break and they have the chicken ball and they do the work and then they go back. That modality may still work, but most likely it's going to be a mixed synchronous modality. And what do I mean by that? There would be a classroom with some people face-to-face working, but there'd also be people that are entering through the live stream. So there's an expectation now that we would be able to support live streaming on top of in-person training. And right now, I need not tell everybody, for the past year, it's all been live streaming. So we've all taken a step up in those skills. Remote synchronous is essentially, everybody's out and everybody's live streaming. That's where we are today. And then there's this asynchronous, this is this on-demand training. And PMI has carved that out to make sure it meets standards, and they offer this training. So I always encourage students, have a look at this, see if it fits your needs. If it does, that's all good. If you want to have this live virtual environment with the activity and the interaction and the explanations on the fly, you should look at the synchronous patterns that are available. And better yet, do both if you have the capacity to do that. So what I'm saying here is the PMI took a very deep look at how to teach this, who the customer is, and they changed the modalities, and they did a very nice job of it. So I'm really kind of thrilled to be able to say that. PMP training, candidly, was a bit of a death march, and it was getting worse. And I think it's gotten just so powerful and useful. And also, I think there are a lot of snake oil salesmen out there, which was diminishing the brand. And I'm happy to see that PMI has stepped in and got involved to really make sure we're delivering a quality product. So I want some of these slides to Dave Davies, but probably everybody who's got the project manager hat on is familiar with the Standish Group and the chaos studies. The thing that I find really intriguing here is they look back and they say, there was an age of predictive, so to speak. And then they say there was an age of Agile. And they say that age is coming to an end. And they're saying, what we're seeing in the marketplace is the apex predators of product development. Your Amazon, your FANG, your Facebook, Amazon, Google, they don't even want to talk about Agile anymore. They want to talk about something that most closely could be described as infinite flow. They want their software to be delivered, and their products really, to be delivered infinitely and constantly tested with the customer, and they want to disrupt everybody else in the market. So I would say that as far as infinite flow goes, this is the direction of the future. And future is coming on fast because it's already out there in many companies. And I work with a battalion of software engineers, and we produce, we're one of the top 10 software engineering companies in the world producing a product. And we can feel the people that can do infinite flow on our heels. There's a hot breath. They're chasing us hard. And, so we're starting to go to infinite flow. And in fact, we're getting there very quickly. But I would just point out that the PMP is ready. We're leapfrogging this tired, old debate about Agile versus predictive and saying, there's more out there. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. So this is just a build on this. 4 evolutionary periods, the Wild Wild West, I think some of us remember that, the Waterfall period, the Agile period, and then infinite flow. And we could say this is emerging, but honestly, it feels like it might be here. Where have we been? Here's all the PMBOK laid out. The number of knowledge areas and processes that were there. And then PMBOK 7, it hasn't come out, so any statement I make here is speculative. But we do have an insider in our little ATP that's more informed than others. And, it's coming out with principles and performance domains. So again, we're starting to look more into what the customer wants. And we're starting to see a shift towards value. So I will go to the changing mindset. And I think the part on the left is, what I came up with, what I was most comfortable with, business environment, people, processes, and then, initiate, plan, execute, monitor, and control. This all made perfect sense to me. But the world has moved on, and the world is much more value-oriented, and the world wants a framework that delivers value quickly. And so the domains that deliver that in the new PMP are business, people, and process. And so everything is pretty much restructured around these 3 domains. So here are 12 principles from the PMBOK 7. And what is so important to me personally about this, and what's probably important to all of you, is that PMI has recognized that there are some forces of nature at play here. There are some, definite things that will make you more competitive than other groups. If you tailor your process, you will do better. This is like gravity. There's no question. If your quality is better at the beginning, you'll save all the time that you can. This is why DevOps is becoming so dominant. Opportunities and threats. If you deal with them, things work out better. This is why Agile is so strong, because you realize threats more quickly. I'm seeing the chat's filling up, so I hope Dave is hitting the chat. And then change management. So all of these things are key principles. And if you look at the PMBOK performance domains, they overlap, they intersect. There's quite a bit going on there. But here's a bigger part of the story for the PMP exam. It's not just the PMBOK anymore. So here are 10 sources, and you might want to grab a screenshot of this or pick it up from the video later. But these are the cited sources. Number 7 is a book that I have been recommending for a long time, called Essential Scrum. And I found that most Agile books tend to be kind of hand-waving introductions. Essential Scrum really gets down to what it's all about. But if you look at this, this is a great list of essential tool work. So let's get into how the exam is structured. The exam content is available for download. Anybody can grab it. There's domains, there's tasks, there's enablers. And then the domain allocation of questions is 40% is people, 50% is process, and then 10 is business environment. So that is how the domains are pretty much spread out. So 42, 50, and 8 to be exact. And then each enabler may or may not have tools and deliverables associated with it. So that's kind of the breakout. 3 domains, 35-ish tasks, 133-ish enablers, roughly 190, 150 tools and deliverables. So that is really the total lay of the land. This is how PMI has organized all the information that's in this 5 days of training. It's a magnificent 35 hours. So I wanted to look a little bit at the ECO domains. I made a pretty provocative comment. The PMP is ready to be post-Agile. It's ready to be post this Waterfall versus Agile tired argument. I truly believe this, because I have delved down into the lowest levels of the ECO, preparing to teach this course, and we've analyzed it, sliced it, and diced it, and done all kinds of stuff. But if you look at all of these tasks on the screen, some of them look kind of familiar, some may not. But here are ones that I see a tremendous amount of Agile adaptation. And people may disagree with this, and they may think others have more. But clearly you can look at something like 1.7 and say, oh my, we're talking about blockers. We're talking about specifically dealing with blockers. I mean, this is very Agile. And I think what's even more magnificent about it is it's still got the other stuff in there. Because if you're a Scrum Master managing 3 to 9 people, for example, in a safe environment, you go into your big room planning and you do something called risk roaming. So you get together all your risks for your group of 100 people and you roam them. And then at the end of that meeting, what do you have? You have a bag of 30 risks. What do you do with that bag of 30 risks? How do you keep track of them? Well, as an individual Scrum Master, you have no clue. You've been to the CSM training and you're saying, well, I don't exactly know what to do with all these risks. Well, if you're a PMP, you know that there's a risk register. You know that there's a way to go forward and track this and manage it and control it. And this is really where the world's going. And people don't really care if you have a risk register or not unless you need it. And if you need it, you better have it. And really, they don't want to have long conversations about it. They expect you to come forward with that. So here's the next piece. Here's the stuff that I think is touching on infinite flow. This is what the apex predators of software engineering are doing. And if you look at 12.13, determine the appropriate project methodology, methods, and practices. So here's something new. And this is, I'll harken back to that conversation with Ron Jeffries so many years ago when we first taught our CSM here in Cincinnati, the heart of the flyover states. Why doesn't PMI wade into this? PMI should wade into this. PMI did. There's a lot in this, and Disciplined Agile does even more of a job at this. So this is just fantastic information. And if you are the master of all of this information, you're ready to go much beyond that team of 3 to 9 people. You are ready for that career elevation. And that's what the PMP has always been about, is making that bigger commitment to the world and, delivering those bigger, tastier projects. So I've just lit up the whole screen and said, where might an Agile question show up on the exam? And then I put comma, or in real life. And the truth is it could show up anywhere. A risk register is not necessarily predictive or an Agile or even an infinite flow document. It depends on the situation, whether you need it or not. You ought to know what it is. But when you look at the questions on the exam, they're not going to say, which outputs of this process would help you to do, it won't be like that. It would be, my team has lots and lots of risks piled up from our last big planning session, and we can't keep track of them. What might I suggest? Things like this. So, the world has moved on, and PMI is doing a great job moving along with them. So here's, I'm kind of nostalgic when I see this. This was the world that I came up in. It was a very controlled and organized world. Perhaps, people would argue not the most effective. Here's the new world. And they say about half of the examination would be predictive. And I have had write-ups from students who've taken the test, and they contest this point highly. They don't think that's accurate. They think it's much more than half. In my own life, we run a SAFE framework with 1,200 software engineers. All of them are doing Scrum. And so you could say, well, you're an Agile shop, but that's not true. We have this event that goes on every year called Beta, B-E-T-A. And this is a testing event where we bring in 100 or so customers and they test our software. Beta's been going on for decades. We know every step that takes place. We know exactly how to do all the steps. We know that we need a critical path through all these steps. We want a Gantt chart. We don't really need this in Agile backlogs for planning because we know things have to start at a certain time when our customers are going to show up in the parking lot, or these days in the virtual parking lot on Microsoft Teams. So I live in a hybrid world because that's what works. It's pragmatic. And most people at scale will be at hybrid. In fact, I doubt that there's full-scale, large-scale development where there aren't some need for some predictive implementations. It's just the way of things. So predictive, agile, and hybrid approaches will be found in all of these domains that get tested. And I think that's a good thing. In fact, beyond that, I think it's a great thing. And I think it's long past due. The next piece is, what does the curriculum look like? So this actually on the screen is the curriculum. These are the sections of the curriculum. This is how it gets taught. So you can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So what's different here? We're creating a team. We're starting a project. We're doing the work. We're keeping it on track. We're keeping the business in mind. My old self says this was all in the PMBOK already. But we do have to acknowledge my new self, which is maybe not that new because I've been doing Agile for now quite a long time. My new self says, yeah, this makes more sense. This makes a lot more sense. This is what you need to do to run a large program. not a framework, not some of the frameworks that are out there, but this is actually what happens out there in the trenches. So I do think that PMI has taken the time to really look at what's happening in the world and lay things out and say, what's going on. Now, in terms of the modern learner, you can see that the training's broken up into sections A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Each one of these sections is cross-cutting with the exam content outline. And that cross-cutting applies broad knowledge in all areas throughout the exam. Each one of these sections is fairly short. It ends with an exercise. So we have value to the student in each of these sections, and there's 35-ish of them. We have support. There's going to be online exams that come from us, but also there's going to be at the end of each section, we're going to look at a tool. We're going to look at something and say, how do we develop it? Now, if you remember the PMBOK and you go back as far as I do, for a very long time, people were saying, geez, I'd like a book of tools. And then a lady named Cynthia Stackpole put together a book of tools. And I think everybody was really happy about that. And we all clapped. We were thrilled by the book of tools. And now it's cooked in. And now it's super, super powerful. So I have to say, this hints at a framework. It hints at a methodology. It hints at that conversation that Ron Jeffries and I had so long ago. And it also hints at something that the students can retrieve later on. Maybe you weren't so keen to go back and retrieve your PMBOK, but if you're actually out there in the field and your team is off track, and the problem is they're in conflict with the stakeholders, you go to Keeping Team on Track, Section D, there's some ideas for me. It's very practical. So I think that this is, it's definitely getting very close to being a masterpiece of engineering. So tools and deliverables, there's lots. We're project managers. We never skip out on tools or deliverables. And there's room for more, of course, and some of them, there's no specific tool, but we'll call for others. But you can see each section has a set of tools and deliverables to look at, and these get tied into exercises. So that's kind of a walk through the tools and deliverables. What I would say is the PMBOK is really good, a really great source of amusement. If you want to see some angry YouTube videos, get out there and look at those. But the PMBOK has changed. I personally think it's for the better. And I'm thrilled. We can only really speculate until it comes out, but I think PMI has done a good job in that. But really, it's all about value, right? I mean, it's about giving that value to the customer and paying attention to it. So I mentioned again that Dave Davies, who's one of the project management gorillas, he's involved in this revolution. He is one of the standards people, and he's an expert, and we have a very, very good webinar available on demand at our website. So if you want to hear more about this, that is a great hour with Dave. And, it just goes through lots and lots of good tools. But this is the thing that I get really jazzed up about, Standards Plus. You can get online and start to fish out these things. And PMI has done something really kind of novel and unique with Disciplined Agile. It's all out there. You can Google just about anything about Disciplined Agile and find it. We are not so interested these days in, definitions, but it's the how. The what everybody has, it's out there, but the how. But these are 3 things that are coming up, and this is what's in Dave's webinar. So I'll offer that, and there's just another screenshot of that. So this is the self-funding promo part of this. Dave and I are doing a boot camp in conjunction with the Central Ohio chapter. If you're on this call or listening on demand, April 12th through 15, 2021, there are seats available in this boot camp. You can tell I am ridiculously excited about this. Dave is too. it's going to be a great boot camp. So feel free to join in. There's a nice discount code here. You won't get it cheaper. If you're a Columbus, Ohio chapter member, they've got a rock bottom price as our partner on this. So we've got some really good training that we're really, really proud of. And, you know, this product is just super. And I can't say enough about how enthusiastic I am about that. So I'll just go back to the beginning and just bomb up there, and then I'm going to unmute and we can take some questions. And I just want to make sure I covered everything I said I would cover. And I think I did. Talked about the PMP, yes. Talked about the domains, yes. Tasks and enablers, yes, yes. Tools, deliverables, yes. New and venerable sources of information. When I get a little spare time, I'm going to buy the ones of those books that I haven't read yet. And we talked about this whiff of a framework and a method that's coming up. So with that said, I'm just going to go here and unmute participants. Or I guess we are unmuted. So I'm going to click on allow participants to unmute themselves and hit yes. So you're all muted right now, but if you go into Zoom, you can unmute yourself. So appreciate any questions that people have. And between Dave and I, if we can't answer it, we'll put it in the parking lot and we'll come back to you. And by the way, if you take that survey, we'll submit your PDUs for you. Please go ahead.
Yeah, so I heard you say April 12th. But I looked on the screen, it said April 15th. So what's the first day of the class?
12 to 15.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yep.
Would you mind checking the slide just to see if I'm crazy?
No, I wouldn't, but I know you're not crazy.
Thank you.
I absolutely know you're not crazy. How about any other questions? Dave, are there any good ones on chat you'd like to cover?
Well, definitely some good questions here on chat. Todd is wanting to take us there wanted to take us down a whole different mindset with how design thinking fits into infinite flow. And I want to call out on that. This is all starting to tie together. I think PMI is really helping that with the PMBOK guide. They're trying to become, I'll say, as much of a connective tissue between multiple diverse components as they are some sort of standard for project managing that, because they see the project manager, the future, really, and I use this term a lot, being the connective tissue to pull all these things together.
Yeah, and there is no question that design thinking as a discipline for requirements is not going to go anywhere. It is permanently embedded in the fabric of infinite flow. So it is certainly there. It's a huge part of SAFE right now. And SAFE has only got 2 or 3 artifacts that are directly tied to design thinking, but it's coming on, and it certainly will not stop. In terms of the PMP, I think that it's probably not something the project manager would be doing, but the project manager would be supporting and making sure happens. So I don't know if that fully answers the question. Let's see, please.
Yeah, Andy, what's the difference between the April 15th through 20th PMP boot camp and what you're teaching there at the bottom, which says we'll teach the 12th to the 15th of April?
This is the boot camp, 12th to 15th April. So.
But at the top of that, on the right-hand side of the slide you were just on, at the top on the right-hand side, it says PMP boot camp, April 15th through 20.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
And the word will is spelled wrong.
That's okay, Willie. We thought you were Andy Bird's Willie.
Willie won't come home.
What's happening there is I haven't had a haircut in over a year. And so now it's getting down to the point of, we have an immunocompromised child in our house. So it's getting down to the point of, do I go full on Willie Nelson and just keep growing it? Or after I get my second Pfizer shot, do I, go out and get my haircut? I'm pretty much sure I'm going to get my haircut. I got Willie Nelson on the brain.
Yeah, I like Willie Nelson. Hey, Andy, I want to address something that's here in the chat about a new PMP, throw away the old stuff and the new PMP. Not exactly. The old PMP stuff, knowledge areas and all that, has now migrated to Knowledge Standards Plus, which is a big knowledge base in that. And we're really trying to build upon. A lot of that is going to be the foundation, the predictive information that's there in the exam. So the old PMP isn't going away, but it is definitely morphing into this new infinite flow professional that's going to be the connective tissue.
And Dave, I'll just build on that and say this is nothing new. The PMP has always done this, and not just the PMP, PMI. That's what we're all about. Every 4 years, the PMBOK gets updated. It's not because we feel like adding a new knowledge area. It's because we've learned more. And it always will evolve. And, I saw the comment in the chat, it sounds like I should throw my PMP away. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. You should get engaged with Standards Plus and take advantage of all this new stuff that, is available to you, and, become that dominant force in infinite flow. It will get you there. And if I could recommend, if you're a PMP and you're retooling, and you're wondering, what do I do? I would start here, read this book.
I have a question.
Please.
So if I studied for the PMBOK 6 test, I couldn't get in because it was all booked. And I take this April class. I have until April 18th to take the test. I don't have much knowledge on Agile. Am I going to pass? Or do I need time? Do I just need to reapply for the exam, my application?
So if your training had no Agile in it, you're not going to pass.
Okay, I've done Agile but very little. So, okay, thank you.
So what I would say to get you over the top, if you have the PDUs, go get your ACP or your Disciplined Agile Scrum Master, and then I think you'll probably have a good chance of passing.
Okay.
But if you're very light on Agile right now and you've done the prior training from a provider that wasn't using this new curriculum, so let me just show the curriculum again. If you're not familiar with this curriculum,
yeah,
I would not put the $500 on it at risk. I would look back and get the Scrum Master and or get the ACP, and chapters work with ATPs to offer these courses all the time. If you go to our website, we offer it constantly, and given your situation, we can work up a promo code for you as well if you need it.
Okay, appreciate that.
Yeah, because we know people have gotten caught in this crunch when they switched over in January in the middle of a plague, and yeah, we try to help everybody we can.
Okay, thank you for your honesty. I appreciate that.
And to that, remember the existing exam does not have PMBOK Guide 7 in it yet. So some of the things we talked about here are a little bit forward thinking.
Yeah, and by the way, I'd like to just say, if you already have your PMP, there's no need to go back and do the test again. All this material is available to you. You just need a brush up. And I would say if you're a PMP and you want to get Agile, go do the ACP or come take a Scrum Master with us. And, we'll get you up to speed real quick. It's not that big of a deal.
Can I put in a plug for the Disciplined Agile? I prefer the Disciplined Agile over the PMI ACP. It's my 2 cents.
And you have been in both.
Yeah.
And, when we teach these classes, we are extremely serious about VSR. And we want to make sure that when you walk out of one of our Scrum Master courses, you've got all the material. So wherever you go for your training, make sure that, there's extras. There should be extras that you can retrieve this information and draw it back up later on.
I'm still trying to wrap my head around the idea of the infinite flow, because it sounds like a lot that the PMI is now looking at the removing the ambiguities through the business requirements gathering or definitions into actually producing something on the back end, service or product or otherwise. Am I right in making that assumption?
I'm not entirely sure that I follow the question, but are you asking are gathering requirements going away?
No, I think it's just getting to requirements in a different way, because one of the things that we keep seeing now is that, or that we do see, is that there's so much change that you haven't finished what you already did before you start a new project to do it. So it's not, you never complete a project, you sort of roll into a project to another project as the business changes mind.
Yeah, and I would call that an anti-pattern. But to your point, the cycles are definitely shorter. And so a company that is releasing software every year has no chance of competing with a company that is releasing features every 6 weeks. Because the salespeople from the 6 weeks company are just going to, dominate in the market. They'll be pleasing the customers. They'll say, well, you'll have to wait a year for these guys. We're ready. Now, here's the thing about requirements. If there are two vendors that are releasing features every 6 weeks and one of them has requirements gathering down and the other is bad at it, the one that gathers requirements well is going to dominate because they understand the customers, they put the infrastructure in place. And, we can go through a litany of products that are out there to help us, gather requirements. And basically, the product that I spend my life on with Siemens is testing everything every day, every build, 70,000 tests. I mean, we're test crazy. And that's the way the world is going. So you can't test without requirements. You need to shoot for a very high CMMI level 5 in order to be, in infinite flow. You really have to be on top of it. And it's not requirements written in a Word document. It's requirements that are part of the test harness, that are out there. And the project manager can help deliver this. So we have a construction question. Let's see if I can find it.
I think basically just how will this fit into a project manager who is in construction and we really don't do Agile? I mean, where's the value in that for us?
So a lot of times construction is very, very good to be predictive, and there's nothing wrong with that, and the PMP would cover that. And it would give you some great ideas about tools to use. But maybe we could think of an example where construction is not so predictive, where you're not entirely sure how to go forward. And, I'll just wing something. Some customer wants solar panels put on their roof, and you've got 4 underlayment options, and you've never used any of the 4 before, and your GC comes back to you and says, I need to do some testing. I need to, put up a little bit of all 4 of these to find out. Congratulations, you're in Agile. You're testing a hypothesis that one of these 4 might be better. And then there's another little fact about construction that people tend to miss. Every day, there's like that trailer parked at the construction site, and there's 4 or 5 people that get together and they talk about what's going to happen that day. So they're having a stand-up meeting. That's
Yes.
an Agile practice. And they're saying, okay, are we on spec? Are we off spec? Where are we behind? Do we need to move people to another area? And guess what? The team is actually doing the planning. So construction, I like it to be as predictive as humanly possible because, I go in these places. Sometimes it can't be.
Actually,
Yeah, it definitely does have some of the Agile values, and we do actually, use some of those tools and techniques, but yeah, it definitely is more predictive than anything.
Yeah, I threw it out there for discussion. It's Brian.
I can throw out a real world example in the last year on construction. I'm in healthcare myself, and we were building drive-up testing sites, and we had tents, and we figured the tents were great, give shelter, everything from the rain. Then one of those days came when we had 60, 70 mile an hour winds, and our tents ended up a couple of parking lots over. And so we did an agile change for how to get our tents to stay put with heavy winds. So it's happening.
I think there's a lot about the agile mindset, that's for sure. But the actual exam probably goes a lot deeper into the software realms, right? With different frameworks, etc.
Well, PMI is trying to embrace, and have always tried to embrace more than just software. So I think you'll see a few hints in there that may not be software specific.
I would agree.
And again, I think this whole last year with the whole vaccination creation and all that, we weren't developing software, we were developing a real product. And I think you'll see some of those types of scenarios, because PMI is very big on trying to get more and more real life scenarios. I think you'll see those starting to creep into the exam.
In any endeavor, you're building teams and you're trying to keep those teams on track, and you have conflict. Anywhere you have people, you're going to have conflict. And people that don't have some training and skills on conflict management, for example, get knocked into the least productive zone that they have. So very common is conflict starts and people without skills get angry and they start yelling.
Yeah.
And you need people to have other ways to cope and deal with it. And it's people management. And you can see here, there's at least 2 sections that are going to delve into that. So yeah, PMI has, for a very long time, embraced much more than software management. So I'll leave you with this thought because we're at our time blocks, and of course that's an agile thing we must maintain, right? I was doing a lightning talk at a PMI conference in Florida, and I went to, excuse me, I went to give my lightning talk, and there's these 2 older conventioning guys, I'm going to say 60-ish, and I'm going to say that these conventioneering guys, and by the way, this is the title that you should fill out for the survey, 2021 PMP update. The 2 old conventioneering guys, they smelled like they'd been out conventioneering. There's a little whiff of alcohol in the Florida air. And they said, Andy, let me tell you about my project. Scheduled value, planned value, 1.5 billion, goes for 20 years. We got procurement going out 50 years. Why should we do Agile? So I'm thinking to myself, okay, they're talking earned value, so they're government. Scheduled value, $1.5 billion, so it's some kind of major construction. So it turns out these 2 old guys are building highways in Southwest U.S. And they know down to an inch how far that tar will spread out of the truck. So they say to me, why should we do Agile? And I say, you absolutely should not. You have plans that have worked for the past 20 years, they'll work. Plans, they'll work for the next 20. You could potentially do some Agile things, but you shouldn't change your life cycle. So I'd like to just, leave you with some, be pragmatic about what you do. So this particular event will be available for online viewing on our website. So if you'd like to direct other people to it, feel free. They can still get to PDU. And Dave's presentation is already out there for online viewing. It's on the video blog. Just look for blog on our website. And I hope everybody can spread the word. The PMP is back and it's lively, and it is looking really good.